Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2. For those of you who don't know, Andrew Crook is the president of the National Federation of Fish Friers. We covered quite a few topics in this, and to be fair to Andrew, he answered everything, and he's a really good sport. And like I say in the podcast, we're not always in agreement, but he's willing to have a conversation. And whether you like him or not, or the NFFF or not, he's there and he's answering questions. So a lot of credit for that. Hope you enjoy. So what do you think? You put a post on Facebook this morning and it was talking about cashless society. And it was interesting because I thought, I've been thinking it for a while. So do you think that's the way the industry's going?
I think that's the way the country's going. I think HMIC would like to, they've recognised the fact that it's a good way of preventing fraud. And to be honest, for a business, I don't see many issues with it. It's quicker than cash. It's obviously more secure. And the other side of it is the delivery side, because that's going to be a big factor. That's again, electronic payments, and it just seems to be the way the industry is going to have to go.
I think that if it's cashless, or at least a lot less cash, you are right. It's going to be a lot more secure, a lot more. It's a no-brainer. But also, it just eliminates a lot of mistakes. And I think one of the biggest things, I think you hit the nail on the head. The HMRC have recognised that that's a benefit to them. So I can see most businesses soon, not just fish and chips, most. You jump in a cab now and it's just paid by card and off you go. So I think that is going to be a big thing. I can't see people going back to cash.
No, and it's just so easy as well. It's always there. And I think when you get cash out of the bank, you spend it, don't you?
Exactly, so
yeah. If you just tap a card, it's done.
Well, from a business point of view, if someone's only got a £10 note on them, they're only going to spend probably £8, whereas because they don't want to spend all of it unless they're pretty reckless. So they always want to keep a little bit on them just in case. Where if you've got a debit card, credit card, whatever, you think about it for another day. Yeah. You're not thinking about it for today. You think about it next month or end of the month or whatever your credit card bill is. So people will be a lot more generous, or at least less wary of spending all their money.
They don't want to be embarrassed when they're ordering. Have I got enough? With pay by card, they just don't think about it. And where my shop is, I've got a pizza shop. There's an Italian. There's a Chinese. During the day, there's a bakery as well. They all offer card facilities. So
that's all the same shop? Or?
No, not quite. I've seen a few shops like that, but there you go. But they all offer. So somebody getting out of the car and they've not got enough cash, or they're a bit, they've not been to the bank, they're coppering up. They're going to go to one of those takeaways rather than mine. So for me, it was a no-brainer. I've been doing it now about 6 years. It's rapidly becoming 50% of my turnover. So, Friday nights, it's a massive thing. And the average spend's up. So,
what would you say to those people that would say, but it slows the queue down?
I think it's quicker, especially with contactless. Yeah, it's just made for us. £30, I think they'll probably increase that as well at some point.
If £30, what's that? 2 bags of chips these days?
Something like that. maybe down south. We're not quite there up here yet. But... no, it's just so easy for people to do, and it's so quick. It's quicker than people. You know what teenagers are like now; they can't add up. Even with tills that tell them what they. Somebody said, "Oh, can I give you the 10 pence?" They don't know what to do. It throws them. With a card, they just tap it. And one bit of technology I saw recently is a pay pod, which is a bit like when you go through a toll booth. So you just throw your money in.
Yeah.
There's a place in Whitby, a bakery that's got one installed. So it's somebody I met down at the XL exhibition.
Okay. So
it could be a stopgap, but they're very expensive. So
the fact is, handling cash is not only getting riskier, but more expensive. So the quicker you can sort of, at the right rate, clearly, but the quicker you can reduce the amount of cash on site, your insurance is going to go down.
Yeah.
The risk level goes down. It's a no-brainer in some respects, and I get how a lot of people are resistant to the change. We all are. Look, we're all resistant to some form of change. So I get it, but I think that sooner or later, it's just the decision's going to be made for us.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so it's been an interesting time in all sort of food manufacture really, or development, retail, because with allergens, and what do you sort of see happening with the allergen law and legislation after the whole Pret-a-Manger thing?
I think we're going to have to disclose ingredients. We're going to have to be. I know we've all got Matrix in our shops now, and we've got all the ingredients listed. I think they'll probably be a bit tighter on revising a list. So I think I think good practice to do it every 6 months. Have a look. It's unlikely if you get the same product, they're going to add an allergen in. I don't think people like businesses they'd have to add a new allergen that doesn't need to be there. But if you change products, obviously you need to check what's in it. It's a scary thing. I think there's some businesses out there that are offering gluten-free and probably not doing it correctly. And we'd always advise getting professional training on it, because if you get it wrong, the repercussions. I mean, now you've got corporate manslaughter. It's a serious thing.
We've seen it, and we give advice to anybody that does start out gluten-free and training, obviously. But we've seen it where people will just happily throw it in with a normal pan. But I'm sure there's restaurants as well that are non-fish and chips that would put fish in the oven that's had bread in there all day, so or meat or whatever. So I think it's just education, isn't it? I think more than anything. The good thing with the celiac disease as such is that the faddy bit is now gone, I think. I don't think people are eating gluten-free because they think it's trendy anymore. And I think there's always, with every new health advice, let's say, there's always someone that says, I'm not eating wheat because it's bad for me, it makes me feel bloated, for example. And then really they've got nothing wrong with them. Yeah. So I think that's the good thing. At least you can talk about, celiacs properly now. I think that sort of fad has probably moved on to veganism now. I think that's where that is. I know we haven't got that problem in this room, but
certainly not. Definitely a carnivore.
So I think that's where it's probably at the moment, and that will probably go for a little fad for a few years. And again, then the sensible people that love it for what they love it for will stick on to that, and others that sort of get bored and move on to their next fad. But sooner or later, they're just going to be eating water and ice cubes. I just can't see where they're going to nourish themselves.
Well, I did a bit of an interview on the vegan fish and chip shop that opened in London.
Oh, yeah, Danny's place, yeah. Danny, yeah.
And I was kind of, the night before, I was thinking, what the hell am I going to say? Because it's not strictly fish and chips, but it just goes to show that people love the dish that we do, and they crave the feel of fish and chips, which...
Yeah, I think my issue with that type of veganism is that I get it completely, and maybe I'm showing maybe I'm showing a bit of bias here, but I think if you're vegan, you should also appreciate the fact that food hasn't been messed around with, and actually, in actual fact, a lot of that food that they call vegan cheese or whatever has like tons of chemicals in it. So I'm really not a fan of anything like that. I'd rather have normal red Leicester. A cow was not killed in the process, and it's true, whatever you say, and I think as consumers, we have the responsibility to buy better, and then farmers adapt to that market, don't they?
Yeah.
So if you're literally going to like the crappiest butcher for the crappiest meat, for the cheapest price, full of water, full of crap, well, you know what? You're part of the problem, vegan or not, that person is part of that problem. So I think, but if you then say, you know what, I'm going to get a smaller joint, and it's going to be, for argument's sake, Waitrose, or up here you've got Booths, or you've got a local butcher. Then that, and it's the same with any food product. If you buy, you sort of, you buy with your purchase power. So, I remember a few years ago there was a court case with Sainsbury's and Tesco where they were doing this price match thing, and Tesco were like, "Oh, we beat that price," and Sainsbury's was like, "No, you ain't, because our ham is British and it's good quality, and yours is Polish." And nothing against the Polish, but it was Polish meat and it was pumped with water. So how could you say that you beat our price? And I think now as consumers, consumers do recognise the difference now. But I think that's where our industry can probably play some big strengths, because we've got a lot to talk about with provenance. I think, a lot of food products probably don't have the same provenance as what we do.
No, we've got a very good link to the source, haven't we? I mean, quite often we know the fishermen. If you go to events, the fishermen will be there.
Exactly.
They're certainly present on social media, so you get to speak to them. I think you're right. I did an interview this Monday with BBC Nottingham. It was BBC Radio Nottingham, and they'd gone out speaking to the general public, and it was about price increases. Obviously, the commodity prices at the moment, and everybody they spoke to said they'll pay a little bit more for fish and chips if it's good. Some people said we're not bothered what it costs. As within reason, if you know what I mean. But I think it was always the quality that's going to win through. So our advice to everybody is stick to the quality end. People will pay for quality.
I think, but isn't that the same with any food at the same time? It's true, isn't it? Like, people don't want... A lot of people would argue with me about this. We'd probably be on the same page. But no one wants a portion that is double the size. And maybe they do. Maybe I'm completely wrong. I'll probably get a load of emails after this that say, nope, you're wrong still. But I just don't believe that loads of people want a ton of food that ends up in the bin. I just don't see it. But I do understand that there's lots of people out there that probably can't afford to buy 4 fish and chips for 4 people in a family. So there's got to be a bit of give and take somewhere. And I think this industry has probably not kept up with the value for money cycle. I think that we've got 2 ends of the spectrum, and value for money sits in the middle. So what you've got on one end is pilot high, and what you've got on the other end is sort of really expensive and low portion. And I think you've got to sit somewhere in the middle, because we do want customers to keep coming back.
Yeah.
So, ideally, some shops, you want them to come in twice a week, you know. So how do you do that? So it's that juggling, isn't it? Keeping your portions at a good size so that people don't feel too full, and then buy one for 2 people. And then, but I understand how a lot of people would probably get really annoyed about that, like that comment, because business is tough for some people out there at the moment. So
it's a very tough market. And I was a fish and chip shop yesterday, and they do a pensioners special, which is it's a very... Is
that what you had?
It's not, no. Certainly not. But he said it keeps it at that price because it keeps the restaurant busy, which I can totally see. And it's a very successful restaurant, so he's definitely doing it right. That's what works for him. But I think there's room for restaurants to offer bottomless portion of chips more than a takeaway. I think with
initially to give less as well. So so if you give like a scoop and then say, oh well, if you want more, just come and tell us. I
think some of the ones that do that still get complaints about portions. I was talking to another one that he's just started doing it in some of his TripAdvisor reviews of, you don't get many chips, but it's bottomless. But I think that's the way to go. We've got to look at food waste. Everything nowadays is going to looking at how you operate. So operating in an environmentally friendly manner does save you money in the long run as well. It's a good way to run your business. There's plenty of shops out there that are proving that point. And I think food waste is something that we've probably overlooked for quite a long time. And I think it's something we need to switch on.
Well, I think, the biggest thing that we find is that at the moment there's a lot of focus on portion size and price. So, but it's worth noting that hopefully within a year, everything will be back to normal and no one's going to put their price back down.
Yeah.
And whatever you say, the margins will be stronger. And a lot of people would argue, but I'm clawing it back. I get that. But in business, you've got to take a long-term view. And I think some of the comments that I see on Facebook are probably quite short-term reactionary. We had a bad week and I've got to do something right now. Well, the problem is, it's like turning a ship. You can't just turn it and expect it to turn left or right or east or west if you're in water. It takes time. Everything takes time for that motion to happen. And I think that, business needs time to develop. And I think you're not going to change something and just expect your customers to be, yep, I want that. You've got to really nurture it. And I think sometimes I see a lot of people say, oh, well, different fish. I've never managed to sell different species. And Mark Drummond's one of them, obviously. I saw his post on Facebook the other day. And I'm not saying he's wrong, but I am. I think the fact that a lot of shops probably just haven't pushed it well enough. Because I know lots of shops, like the one you went to yesterday, sell a lot of different species. And they do work. So, is it just one of those things that you've got to not sell as a lost leader, but accept that there's going to be more waste for the first 2 to 3 months until people get the flavour of that product?
I don't know. I mean, I've tried all sorts of different species as specials. And customers come through the door and they'll say, I've got some lovely hake or I've got some sea bass. And you'll get the odd person trying it, but the week after they'll be back to cod and haddock, and that's what they want. It depends what region you're in. I sell probably 95% cod, 4% haddock, and 1% place. That's probably the way it goes. Interestingly, I'm selling loads of scampi at the moment because I've just changed my menu and put it more visual, and I think that's driving scampi. Can't keep up with it at the moment, but on the whole, people know what they want. They know fish and chips
before they come in.
Exactly, they've made their minds up, and you've got to offer what they want, but at a price that suits and a portion that suits. So give the consumer the option. Not everybody wants a big portion of chips. So you mentioned Mark Drummond. I pinched this off Mark, but I do a regular fish and a half portion of chips, and it works brilliant. I sell loads of them, and it's just an easy buy because it's visual. I'll have a meal deal 2 or a meal deal 1. Just make it easy for the customers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just getting your menu right, and I think with what's going on at the moment, it's a good time to look at what you offer. And just try and change your menu, see if you can improve things. Look at your openings, see if you can change anything there.
I think that's a really good point. However, we've probably started the wrong way around here because we got so into the conversation early on. But what I want actually is to talk a little bit about you and you personally first, because I think everyone knows you as the NFFF guy. I bet hardly anybody knows that you actually do run a chip shop, and you started in it from a good age. Because you're about 60 now. So what I want to know is, how did you get into the trade? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, there's a long story. We used to meet me and my mum in Preston, and we used to go in a fish and chip shop, which had been a fish and chip shop for around about 100 years. So it was an old shop. My mum had worked at British Aerospace, which is where she met my dad. And when I came along, she packed in working, and my dad had got a good job at British Aerospace. She wanted something to do, so she'd always been a worker. So she said to the owner of the shop, if you ever feel like selling, I'd be interested in taking it off your hands. And they said, well, it's up for sale. Oh, really? So she bought it, and they'd no experience at all. This shop, going back to 1982, so it's quite a while ago, had no fridge when they bought it. They had steak puddings underneath the counter, and it was the building was 300 and odd years old, so it was very difficult to seal. So there were rodent problems, so they had a real uphill struggle. I think she sacked all the staff in the first day because they were smoking in the kitchen, all sorts going on. My gran had a bit of fish and chip experience, so she came into the business and helped to run it. Eventually, my dad had a heart attack, and he decided that working in industry he'd had enough of the backstabbing, so he decided, I'll give fish and chips a whirl. So he joined my mum in the business. I was a little bit young. I was around about 9 or 10. I used to help washing up in the fish and chip shop, as you do when you're growing up. Probably annoyed the staff more than anything. I used to victimise the staff, and to be honest, not a lot's changed. If you speak to my staff now, I've still not grown up on that. Yeah, you've got to be. But you just start getting into it. I enjoyed dealing with the public. When I was 17, I went working for John Menzies, which is a bit like W.H. Smith's.
Okay.
They're not, I think they do newspapers. Yeah. Fly them around the world now, but I enjoyed dealing with the public there. And then I went working at Asda, and again, it was the public side of things. Really, it's what interests me. I was good at it. I like talking to people. I like finding out what makes people tick, and getting friendly customers. And even in a big supermarket, people come in and they know you. So I was at university studying computer programming, and I came out of university, got offered a job at British Aerospace, and I was a bit unsure. I went for the interview, and there was 200 people going for working in the same department. Okay. Probably about 30 going for the jobs that were there. It was working on the Joint Strike Fighter, so it was programming avionics. So quite an interesting job. But I'm ambitious, and I thought, where's the promotion coming there? Because there's 200 people in the department. Yeah. If I'm going to get promoted, I'm going to move sideways. So I thought, I'll go into fish and chips. So I joined the family business, and it's. I won't say I've never looked back, because you know what it's like.
Of course.
You run a fish and chip shop, run a business. It's tough, and especially a family business, because you have disagreements. There's me and my dad used to fight like cat and dog. Usually when my mum was about, me and my dad would get on when my mum wasn't there. But yeah, it's just something that I like. The public. I thought, why not work for myself? Let's see what I can do. And I think for the first 5 years, I was probably more into the money than the job, and then I think the interest of the business took over, and I just love fish and chips, and it's such an interesting industry to be involved in. It's just it's certainly not very varied, and especially now with what I do, things change. But the NFFF side of it, I was very lucky. So obviously I worked with my parents in the fish and chip shop. I knew my dad as, obviously my dad. Got involved with the NFFF in the Northwest. We started going to the Burnley meeting, and I was usually feeling a little bit fragile from a Saturday night out, and it was a Sunday morning.
That's not like you, is it?
Well, I've cut that down a bit now. But yeah, I just turn up and you start listening and you get involved. There's a little bit of politics side of it, but the stuff you learn from getting in front of other Friers it's invaluable, the tips and just comparing commodity pricing. I suppose some of that is available online now, but just getting together with other people and you start realising, it was Greg Howard that actually said this to me when he first went to a meeting. He started talking to people and he realised there's other people just like me because all my friends at the time, I was in my 20s, they're all going out on a Saturday night and I was working.
Yeah.
I'd have to join them later on, but it's still not the same. They're ready for going home just as I'm getting going, so it's just great to meet other people that have got the same pressures you've got. But the NFFF opened up another door, and I know why my dad got involved with the NFFF, which is something that I've probably not talked about. I might have mentioned it once or twice on Facebook, but when they had the first fish and chip shop in Preston, the shop down the road was the president of the Preston branch. So the Northwest had 26, 27 branches, which fed into the Northwest Area Council.
Oh, wow, okay.
That then fed into the main board. So the president of the Preston branch had the shop down the road, and my mum was talking to a customer and they said, well, why don't you sell cod? And naively she said, well, we don't sell cod because it's got worms in it. So this customer went to the shop down the road that sold cod and said, well, I'm not buying your fish anymore, it's got worms in it. So instead of that person thinking, well, these are new and they need to gain the knowledge, he decided to blackball them so they couldn't join the NFFF, which is why when my dad got the opportunity, he got involved and started changing things. So that's why I've tried to carry it on after my dad, obviously, and make that change.
You give up a lot of your time to help people. And I suppose that's probably where it comes from to some degree, that you know what it's like to be ostracised for a mistake.
Yeah, and I think it's important. We get stronger working together. So you don't gain anything by not helping people. If you want to share knowledge, we're not competing with each other. We're competing with other food options.
Yeah.
We're competing with national chains, and by working together, we can take some of these challenges on and face them down. We've got more of a voice. So,
when did the chipping operation come about? Because we've got a mutual friend in James Morley, and we didn't know this until a few years ago, but I've known him all my life because he was our potato guy, and he's now a very good friend and advisor, and obviously he helped you do your potato business, didn't he?
I met James. We had 3 shops, and one of the shops had a very small prep area. So it was just ridiculous. I could have like 10 sacks of spuds in there, and you couldn't swing a cat. It was hard work when you're prepping you. I was approached by a guy who had a prep business in Preston, and he said, why don't you give us a whirl? So I started using his product, and I liked the product. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. This is probably going back, must be 15 years ago, so it's quite a while ago. He wanted to go into a business with his brother, had a tree surgery business, so he approached me and said, do you fancy taking it over? I want to get out. So we bought the business. They weren't doing it right. They had a big vat, which was a milk tank from a dairy. So, and they had filled that with dry whites at the start of the month, and then used the same dry white. It was massive vat. They couldn't change the water. So I thought I'd get advice. So I got a guy called Peter Gresty from Agritech, who's a dry white agent, and he gave me some advice. And then I met James Morley, just somebody else in the business doing it, and James showed me how to do it properly with Peter's advice as well. And it's James was doing something like 40 tons or something like that. I was probably doing about 6 or 7 at the time. But from there, I took it on. We met more shops coming on. Seniors came on as a customer. Grew it round to about 10 ton. With seniors coming on, that was a big bump, so that was a lot to digest, to be honest, at the time. And then I met a potato farmer, somebody who worked for a bloke called Colin Bradley up at Euxton. Came in and they were trying to diversify. He had a farm who was growing 20,000 tonne of potatoes a year. He had one customer, which was McCain's. So he wanted to diversify, and obviously just having one customer is no good. If you upset him, you're dead in the water. So he started supplying out sacked potatoes, and then the guy that worked for him told Colin about what we were up to. So he was interested, and he said, oh, well, why don't you move up to my farm? and we'll section off a bit of a unit I've got, start prepping there. I think Colin probably had bigger ideas unbeknownst to me, so over the discussion, the factory got bigger and bigger, and we ended up opening NFFF chips. Which,
Okay.
I'm quite proud of what I did. It was a big learning curve, and I always thought there's a lot of potential in prep chips, and I think probably in it about 15, 20 years too soon.
Yeah, I said that about James. Like I say, even today, he was far ahead of the curve. Like I think, like back then, potatoes what £3 a bag at the most for good quality potatoes. You know, so most people were probably paying £2. Water, there was no water meters really. So whereas now, 15, 20 years later, it's quite the opposite.
I think the other thing that will probably change as well, the water companies being deregulated, I think they'll be looking for other revenue streams.
Yeah.
There's a good chance that people will get charged for trade effluent, which that's quite a worrying thing. When we took a factory out of receivership before FFF opened, which was Williams Food, and I think his bill was £80,000 a year. Wow. He was processing a fair amount of potatoes, but it's another cost that we've not got now, and it's something that people need to think about. But the convenience, I do like prep chips. I mean, I always like doing potatoes, but I use pre-prepared chips now. And it's so convenient as long as you've got a good supply. And I think that the key to it is...
Well, the more people that use them, surely the better the consistency will be as well in time, I'm thinking. Because obviously it's a perishable item, so the more people that use it, I'm guessing they'll just move faster.
Yeah. But the more people, there'll be more people open up. So, it's... I think distance is a big thing. So if you're on the south coast, you don't want to be buying from Scotland.
Yeah.
You want somebody close to you. So if there is a problem, they can do something about it. But it does work for a lot of shops. I'm not saying it'll work for everybody, but...
Do you ever see the British going over to like your frozen chips, like Australia and New Zealand, or...?
I don't think the quality's there. I think it's a different product. You go to a 2-for-1 pub, they can do fish and chips, but the only ones that are doing it well use proper chips. I think it's a difficult product. The delivery side of it, it's difficult to say because over time, people accept a change in what they eat. Yeah. So a restaurant meal 10 years ago isn't what people consider a restaurant meal now. They consider going to a Toby Carver, a beef eater, and they consider that a restaurant meal. I think it's... People accept it. Whether they'll accept a change in chips, I don't know. I guess it depends how well we do the job, doesn't it?
I do miss the crinkle cut.
Yeah,
I must admit that was a good chip. And obviously we've had some bad news recently with Hopkins going into receivership. And I was talking to Victoria there, and she said they did have a cutter for that, and it just do a great crinkle cut. And I thought, because they did sell it in America.
Yeah,
and I thought, it's a shame because. I do, in terms of what chip picks up the most salt and vinegar, that would be it all day long to the surface area. But the problem is, it's that connotation of crinkle cut and frozen, and I think that's why people probably moved away from it.
There's also issues with it's probably higher fat content. Obviously, we might come on to acrylamide later on, but acrylamide as well. So there's certain issues with it as well. But I know there's shops out there that sell them successfully and. I mean, fat's been demonised, but it does add flavour, and it's and it adds texture as well. With the more surface area, the texture will be changed. So
I think fat is probably coming around to be actually the most demonised food over the last 30 years. That everyone's probably starting to realise actually that's got nothing to do with how bad we all feel.
Yeah,
I think, or the weight that we all put on. I think, and again, like the honesty of our food product will hopefully come through over the next few years because. Again, we probably pipe on about it a lot in our industry, but it is a fairly honest meal. Generally what goes into it. Yeah. The ingredients, if you're doing fish and chips, are under 5 items. So I think we are well placed. It's whether we say the right things, and I think that's the important thing. But let's move on a little bit. So now you can tell us a little bit about the National Federation of Fish Friers. So I did a little bit of research. I'm quite good at that. So. It started in 1913.
It did, yeah.
Yep. 1925, the review goes live.
Yep.
I'd love to see a copy of that. Have you got them?
We've got archives. I'm not sure what date they go back to. I don't know whether we've got the first, but we've got some. We've got the majority of them, yeah.
Okay. And then in 1976, the training school opened. So what do you think the main difference is since the first president, Harry Hamer? What do you think? If he was alive now, what difference would he see today? Do you think?
well, I think the technology's definitely changed. I mean, it'll be coal fired back in those days. I think quality as well. I think the general public now know what good fish and chips should be like. I think in the past, there were 20 odd 30,000 fish and chip shops in the 1920s and 30s. People had a fish and chip shop on every other street. I think now people will travel for quality, so you don't need all the little backstreet shops. I think certainly the way things are going, it's more difficult to run a fish and chip shop now. There's more legislation. I think the bigger shops have got more chance of success. But I don't know, the entire industry's changed. You know, the supplies of frozen fish being prevalent. It's
I think even batter itself. You think batter itself back then, it was like a fish pasty, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You discard the batter. It wasn't meant to be eaten.
Yeah, it's a bit like the ones they use in the papers nowadays, isn't it? I see plenty of those as well. But yeah, the entire product. I mean, the total industry's changed. The staffing levels. I think the opening hours of the shops. I mean, shops used to open 3 shifts: a lunch, do a tea, and a supper.
Back then, there were very much husband and wife teams as well. Like, you know, because there were so many shops. I'm guessing they were a lot less busy. Although busy, don't get me wrong, but it would have been very much a family-run operation. And you know, years ago, most kids either worked with a family or they went out and got a factory job, whereas that probably started to change in like the 60s and 70s anyway. So, but yeah, imagine the 1900s would have been an interesting time. Like,
I just don't know how they did it all. If they were working in the shop till midnight, but they still gave up time on a Sunday to attend meetings for the NFFF, because as I said, there were 26, 27 meetings in the Northwest alone, and there was 10 regions. You know, a lot of people gave up the time to meet, and I don't know how they managed to do it with all the hours they used to open. I mean, the industry's definitely changed because of the pub scene backing off. You know, people don't go to the pubs anymore. And I still get people coming in the shop, I'm sure everybody else does, and saying, "Oh, why don't you open late?" It's like, well, there's just no trade there. You've got to do your families at tea time, and then, you know, that's it.
Yeah.
You can't stay open for a bag of chips here and a bag of chips there. You've got to do the peak. Whereas I think then, obviously, as you said, with when it's a husband and wife team, the wages are low. They've no VAT, obviously, so that probably helped them a lot. And the portions were a lot smaller as well. So they used to do a 3-4 ounce fish and probably 5, 6, 7 ounce of chips. Whereas I think we've crept up on the portion size. Obviously, the costs and the legislation, which puts more costs onto business.
There was zero legislation back then.
Well, that's it. There were no food safety. It's no health and safety. Everything was just, you know, free and easy. And it's got to be a good thing to have some legislation. It's got to be a good thing. We're a lot more professional now. But there's still the opportunity. I've said for a long time that people that are serving food should have some sort of formal training, because you're serving a product that people are consuming. You know, they're putting it into their bodies, and it's, even if, I mean, basic food hygiene gives you a bit of knowledge, but I think the time has come where there should be some sort of licensing to serve food. And I think it just takes all the opportunities out. That there's people that buy shops, run them for 6 months and fleece them and shut them down. I'm not talking.
I think at the very least, I heard something a few years ago, and it was about Lloyd's Bank, and that they would only give loans if people had gone to a training school.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it never transpired, because it never did. But I think that's a really interesting thing, that at the very basic, if I'm going to open a restaurant, I'm generally going to either do a chef's course or work with a chef, or, you know, I just, you know, you can't just jump in a car and be a taxi driver. You can't. You need a license. So it is. The food industry is an anomaly in some ways, that anybody can just sort of set one up, and that's fine, because look at people like Rick Stein. You know, he wasn't a chef; he's a cook. You know, and look what he's done. But I'm sure he's educated himself all the way through it, and, you know, he's done very well. But I think it wouldn't be a bad idea if there was some form of like education and checks in place to make sure that people that enter the food industry, retail especially, had some knowledge, you know.
I agree, and I think the reason it fell by the wayside with Lloyd's was recession.
Yeah.
So they weren't lending money to anybody anyway. So it just died down. And then people move on and you lose the contacts. But it's something we'd be interested in relifing. And I think not only the food side of it, but also the business side of it, the banks should teach. You know, there's a lot of people out there that don't know how to work out the margins, and it's, you know, set up the menus and set the pricing structure right. And I think more than ever, with what we've got ahead of us for the next 2 years, that's going to be more and more important. I just think that side of it's probably lacking. And I know the work we're doing at the NFFF at the moment, we're trying to look at other courses we can offer which are a benefit to the industry.
Yeah.
We're looking early next year to do a workshop. Probably first one will be up in Scotland. One of them will probably be working with the Welsh meeting. One will be the Northwest meeting, the two active meetings that still take place. And then we'll move it around the country. But we could give people a little bit of training on business, a little bit of training on oil management, a little bit, just give them that advice, because I think there's a lot of issues out there that we can't just limit to members. I think we need to open some of the knowledge up to wider industry. We need to tackle it as a whole industry. I mean, the NFFF represents 10,500 fish and chip shops. Around about 10% of those are members, so they're paying members. But quite a lot of the meetings that I attend just represent everybody. We're there to fight off legislation, to give input to government. I've just done a consultation on packaging. Did one again on mandatory calorie labelling on menus. All these will affect every business that are out there. And I think some of the big issues, we have to work together as the entire industry, which is why we've done a couple of micro-sites recently, which we have chipchamp.co.uk, which it's about chip quality, but really it's about acrylamide. And it's just to give people pointers to show the industry that, to show Public Health England and Food Standards Agency that we're working towards reducing acrylamide. And as an industry, we take it serious and we're working on that issue. The same with Perfect Portion. Obviously, we took over your nutritional testing service. It's just showing Public Health England that we are trying to manage things. Yeah. It probably won't be enough for them, but we are doing things.
Regarding acrylamide, and I had it on my list for a bit later on, but you brought it up now. But, when I was talking to... there's a chap there's a professor at Leicester University, and he's like the head professor of like biosciences or whatever. And we were talking about acrylamide, and he just started laughing. And I said, "Why are you laughing?" He goes, "It's a joke." He goes, "You know how much acrylamide you've got to eat to make it a problem?" And I was like, "Go on, give me an example." And he goes, "In one day, you've got to eat about 9 kilos of fried chips. Yeah. About 30 to 40 packets of crisps. And then, what else did he say? He said loads and loads of coffee, like litres of coffee, but not good coffee. We're talking like just Nescafe, yeah? So neat. And he says, then, if you do that for about 6 months, you'll probably get cancer from something else, yeah? So he said, like, so he says, like, the acrylamides are really, he goes, what he thinks, and, again, like I don't want to, I'm paraphrasing because he's not here, obviously, but he thinks that it's almost like the global food industry have been told about this. Yeah. And thought, we'll take acrylamide because we can deal with that. It's low-hanging fruit. But the biggest issue he thinks is aldehydes. And he says that aldehydes are like, it's an acid. So if you think of formaldehyde, it's a form of that. And he says we breathe that in. It's in the oil, And when people use liquid oils that are high in polyunsaturated fat, this is what happens. You get a high content of aldehydes, and you breathe it in, and it's cancerous. It's really bad for you. And he says that's the biggest issue. He goes, because you don't actually have to eat a lot of that to get ill, So, and he says, like, and again, this is. It's his opinion based on facts that he knows. So, maybe if we get him on the podcast, we can talk to him. But, he was saying, really, this is where years ago, when most people would have used lard or beef dripping, this problem would have never been around, because the high saturated fat level that has now been demonized was protecting people from that. Yeah.
Well, I think with acrylamide, it got on the radar of the European Food Standards Agency. It's been there or thereabouts. The NFFF were working on it with the associate members for 10 years before anyone mentioned it. It's been on our radar, and it's just something we knew that would grab a headline. The headline could be chips cause cancer.
Yeah, that's it. That's all you need. Yeah, exactly.
So we needed to manage it, and now the legislation every 6 months the Europeans come back, and it'll carry on once we come out of Europe. If we come out of Europe, I will not go on to that. Yeah,
no.
But anyway. It's just going to keep coming back, but now you have to have some sort of system in place, or some sort of awareness that's in your food safety system that you acknowledge acrylamide and you're taking steps to reduce it. So we just decided that's something that we can do online that is open to everybody.
Yeah.
Just doing the test, which is free for everybody to do, just proves that printed out, but you can get a certificate. Obviously, there's an admin fee for the certificate, but but you don't
So
need
you
to get
charge
that.
for these things? How dare you?
Well, I know. We've got the website was free because I built it, so my computer degree didn't go to waste. But there we go. But there's got to be some sort of admin charge, but people can use it free. You know, there's no charge if you don't want the certificate. So, and I just think that issue is something we need to tackle. With the aldehydes, I think the oil industry needs to do a little bit more. Neoda will be the perfect people to deal with it. There's a lot of talk about moving oils, and I've done the same thing. I moved on, and we've had discussions in the past. I moved on to rapeseed oil. I moved on to sunflower oil from palm oil. At the moment, I'm on palm oil. One of the reasons I went to a meeting in the summer, which was organised by Chester Zoo and WWF. The world, there's too many. I mean, it's not the wrestlers either. And it was talking about sustainable palm. I've seen a few shops talking online and just messaging and putting posts up about orangutans, and there's a lot more activity over it. I think Iceland, the supermarket, have brought it to the forefront. The wrong thing to do is move on to different oils because of the palm oil issue.
Well, all right, so I think the problem is the mistakes always. So we need to learn from our mistakes as an industry. Yeah. So I think, and we never do generally, because no one thinks that far ahead, and new people come in the industry, etc., etc. So if we learn from the mistakes that we've made with packaging, let's apply that to oils.
Yeah.
So for example, because everyone gave us this advice years ago, rapeseed oil was better. It's healthier. You know, you still see it somewhere, and now on paper it is healthier. You know, it's got lower saturated fat. But it's great if you're making salads. The minute you fry with it, though, the things with aldehydes is that they grow with every fry. So let's say you do one fry with rapeseed and it's in at 10% by the end of that shift. Well, even if you was to filter, it would drop to like 7. But then you switch it on again, it goes from 7 to 15, and then it will drop to 13, and it keeps building up and building up and building up. And then you see shops on Facebook and they're like, well, I've been using rapeseed oil, I've never thrown it away. And you sort of think to yourself, alarm bells ring, because you're thinking, you know, how you know, what content of that is aldehydes, you know, and whereas if you look at the palm and going back to palm beef dripping, and to be fair, there's solid fats that are coming through now that are really robust. We need that highly saturated fat. And also what we probably also need is really high monounsaturated fat, you know, and that's what makes probably olive oil the most perfect oil on the planet. And again, we don't use it for fish and chips because there's so many, you know, issues around it. But I think that, you know, this takes us on to packaging a little bit now, because, you know, we need to generally learn from these mistakes, because we don't really, as an industry, look outside of our industry for advice. We generally get all our advice from within the industry. So I think, so for me, we've got to be very careful, because, you know, if we don't apply the logic, we end up making the same mistakes what we're doing with packaging. And in my opinion, that's ripe for a bit of a mess at the moment.
I'd agree. I'm quite concerned about the awards, to be honest, because quite a lot of the shops that are in the finals are doing beach cleans, which is fantastic.
Of course, yeah, massively.
No, but they're also going on about biodegradable packaging. But not all packaging is biodegradable. It's not so much the packaging you use, it's what happens to it after it's been consumed. A bio box is great if it ends up in a composting facility. Even in your compost heap at home, it'll break down. If you then sell it to a member of the general public who puts it in general waste, it's going to go to landfill or incineration.
Which is where probably, at a guess, because we've got no data, which is probably where 99.9% of it ends up, general waste. Yeah. You know, so a lot of the plastics people are saying, well, you know, like biodegradable packaging is still a plastic. You know, and I think, you know, it's a polymer. It's just made from vegetables, you know, sugar beets or whatever, or cane or whatever it is, bagasse. So, you know, a friend of ours, you know, buried some in his garden. Been in there 6 years. It's still there.
Yeah, you need oxygen. You need bacteria. Some of the actual biodigestive facilities, the composting plants, the cycle's too quick for these to break down as well. If they do go to landfill, they give off methane, which is again a problem. So I think rather than just switching packaging now, we need to wait for advice.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think if we're looking at it plainly, really plainly, and I think if we break it down for us layman people, I think actually the best probably packaging out there, and this isn't advice to go buy something, but it's the most common sense, is probably the corrugated board at the moment. Yeah. Because, well, when I say best, I mean best for degradation. Yeah. Now, the biodegradable bagasse cartons are great for keeping the product fresh and crisp. And that's where we should be selling it on, to be honest. We should be, and the message should be dispose of this product or packaging responsibly. I think that should be the message from us, I knew of one restaurant, fish and chip shop, who moved over to bio boxes because his restaurant backs onto a river, and I think he was sold on the fact that now when people litter, it will dissolve. Well, we now know they won't. Yeah. It doesn't matter how much water you spray on these things, they won't dissolve. Whereas if it was old-fashioned wrapping paper or a bio box, corrugated box, they would rot after a while. It wouldn't be long. It'd go all mushy. And you can't reuse it because, again, the councils don't take anything that food's been in. Which is a problem in itself.
Well, this is one of the things I've heard recently. The likely outcomes. We've just done a consultation for DEFRA, which was talking about plastic cutlery and plastic plates, as they termed it, but they meant food trays. I was one of 15 people that they spoke to. Martin Kirsch, who's executive director of the Food Packaging Association, who'd be a good guy for you to talk to at some point. He was one of the other ones that consulted as well. I had a meeting last week in London, and he updated it was the British Takeaway campaign. He updated the meeting. The likely outcome is mandatory food waste collection, which again isn't a bad thing, and it'll also get businesses thinking about the food waste and portion. So that. But I think there's going to be more taxation. There's going to be higher waste costs. So we need to look at how we operate. And
I would love to see an economist calculate the detrimental effect of people moving from plastics to paper.
Yeah.
For example, Wetherspoons, they move over to. I don't really understand, other than the fact that they jumped on a PR wagon, why they would go over to paper straws. Yeah, because let's face it, 99% of their waste is closed loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially plastics. Yeah. You have a straw, you don't take it home with you, do you?
No.
Yeah. So they could recycle it. It wasn't ever a problem. So instead, they move over to a heavier product, which is paper. Yeah.
So it doesn't work as well.
And it doesn't work as well. So now I'm drinking a drink through toilet roll, essentially. And to be fair, and this is something I was reading up on yesterday, these paper straws are lined with PLA.
Yeah.
So they're no better.
Yeah.
At least with a plastic straw, you can set it to one side, like McDonald's do, and like Wetherspoons probably did, and get them recycled.
I think McDonald's been very clever. They get you recycling in the store now, don't they?
You see, you've got different slots now, and I think we've all got to learn from that. Now, fish and chip shops, because of the independent nature, probably can't have closed loop systems, So it's even more difficult for us, which means we're probably at risk of more taxation than everyone else. McDonald's can turn around and say, well, look at us, we're doing it all right. We siphon it all off and it all goes here and it all goes there. We can't do that.
The other thing is, there's no one solution for a fish and chip shop. Depends what products you sell. Up in the northwest, I've got corrugated fish and chip boxes, but I've also need trays because I've got a lot of gravy and curry.
Of course.
So there's no one solution, and also there's no one recycling solution. So each area has different facilities, and I think the government needs to start getting its act together, start advising us.
They're a little busy at the moment, aren't they?
Well, they are. I think everything's all about the B word, but. This came along on the back of Blue Planet. I think it caught everybody unawares, and people knew there was an issue there, but they didn't expect it to get as much traction. I
find that consumers in Britain, and this is a first world problem, and I'm probably going to insult lots of them, but I'm part of the problem. You are, we all are. We all get, we're so reactionary to things like that. Oh my God, the turtle had a straw up its nose. Okay, well, is that because it's plastic, or is it because someone littered?
Yeah.
And we know it's a part of both. We get that, but the fact is that it's because someone littered. So, the ocean is a mess because there has been mass littering. That is why.
And the majority is probably not from Western countries. I think it is.
And it's probably like the fact that we sold on a load of, as in the first world countries, sold on a load of rubbish to third world countries who then just tipped it off the edge. Yeah. And so we've all got a part to play in this. And, so if someone is selling a load of waste, well, we should see where it went and how it ended up. But we don't, because once it's left our shores, we just think, So I think there is the responsibility should be at the top of the chain, not just the bottom of the chain.
But I think as an industry, fish and chips is very responsible. You see what we've done with sustainable fish, the sourcing side of things, fantastic. And people are doing things because they want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
what I'd advise is just wait for a bit more advice.
I think we should also, as an industry, we should be shouting louder about the mess in the oceans, all the mess, because I think if you was to drive past the countryside, through the countryside even, and you saw awful pastures, and it was just brown and horrible, and there was cows there, it would put you off eating steak. Yeah. If you saw a cow that was essentially in a junkyard, you'd be like, I ain't eating that.
Yeah.
And I think that's essentially the problem. That's the long-term message of dirty oceans.
Yeah.
So I think, I think that all the beach cleans are great. I also think that street cleans are a good idea. Yeah, because it's all right driving 40 miles to the sea, but if your road outside the shop is a tip, then what's the point?
I think in the past, a lot of shops employed local teenagers to do litter picks, and it's a great thing. Just get them some yellow bibs and send them off some grabbers, and away you go. I think anything we can do, we've got to set an example. We've got to show that we are doing our bit to try and reduce plastic usage. So quite happy for shops to be moving on to paper bags, but I think with the trays, we've got to wait to find out what's the best thing to use, and speak to your waste collection service. If it's your local council, speak to them. We can help put you in touch with people if you're an NFFF member, but it's very localised. There's no solution for anybody at the moment. We can't just say this is what you should do. Which is why we've been holding off a bit. But I don't know if you noticed on Facebook, I've been trying to have a word, and I've had a word with a few of the finalists behind the scenes. Say, just be careful what message we're sending out, because the danger of the awards is that's the biggest driver of standards and the direction the industry goes. And my concern is people latch onto the plastic set and the bio box, and that's the right solution. So we all need to do it.
I think that, but if they're, and this is where I defend those guys a little bit, and girls, is that they're taking advice from whoever they buy the products from.
Yeah.
So, I know a lot of the time people ring me and say, tell me about this, because I use your bag and I want to have the right message, or whatever it is, or can I recycle the paper bags, etc. So if the message from me is one thing, I've seen it where, someone's gone off track a bit, and I'll say, look, I didn't say that, and they'll be like, okay, I'll correct it. And but if the packaging supplier of choice is saying X, Y, Z, and they're repeating X, Y, Z, then So I think, it's at every level. We've got to be having this conversation at every level. So for me, those bio boxes, great product, fantastic product, but there is, we should be talking about the positives of what they do, and one of those positives is not biodegradability. It's just not. Unless, and this is a really good thing, if maybe fish and chip shops did a return program, and then we figured out how we could store these for a month and then get them recycled, or even just composted.
Nobody wants dirty trays going back in the shop. You've got food safety issues, haven't you? I mean, it becomes a biohazard, doesn't it, over a period of time? I think one of the things is people moving on to glass bottles over plastic bottles. The big danger there is if everyone moves on to glass bottles, the weight of glass bottles means more wagons on the road.
There's a few problems with glass. So you've got that problem, and the fact that the world is running out of usable sand. So, that poses another problem. And then you've got the fact that if someone has a tin or a can of water, drink it, and then lob that down the street, what difference did it make? None whatsoever. So I think, again, consumers need to be a bit more responsible about how they are. Retail shops can't act on behalf of consumers. We can try, but if they want to throw it down the street, they will throw it down the street.
I think governments at the moment they want to engage with business. So we've had a lot of interaction on calories and obviously plastics and what's going on there. But they're keen to put things onto the business rather than the consumer. One of the things with the coffee cup, they were talking about putting a levy, which they wanted the consumer to be aware they were paying it, just like climate levy on energy bills. Where that's up to at the moment, I'm not sure.
Well, I know when I frequent coffee shops quite a bit.
Yeah, we know.
So I think Costa Coffee, I saw a sign saying that they use fully compostable. Now, I don't know if that means plastic material like PLA, etc., or whether it just means no coating on the cardboard. No idea. So the likes of Starbucks and all them lot say, bring it back and we'll dispose of it. And that's where I got the idea from. It's not that hard. Bring it back, and maybe someone like our wholesalers, distributors can figure out a way to get this material dealt with. But I think when I was at I think you was with me. We was at the trade show recently in London. I can't remember which one it was. Forget.
Excel.
Yeah, one of them. And I don't know if he was with me, but we was chatting to a guy, and he said there's this material they've got that they spray all packaging with, and it's waterproof, oil-proof, heat-proof, but it's fully biodegradable. And he says all he's trying to do is get all manufacturers of paper to just license it, and it's like half a penny per cup, not even that, or per tray. It seemed like it was a positive thing, and I might reach out to him at some point. But I think he was saying we're not trying to be the cup manufacturer. We just want to be the licensee of that spray, whatever it is.
I think technology will improve. I think obviously now everyone's switched onto it, and it's the scientists out there, companies out there will realise there's a lot of money to be made if they get this right. So I think maybe in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, we'll have a different conversation. But for now, I'd just say, do your research and don't react.
What is worth saying, it says a lot about our industry that we're willing to take that extra cost and jump over to something that is perceived to be better. They bought it with the right intentions. Yeah. So it says a lot about that. There is a market there.
Yeah, fish and chips are always so impressed by individual businesses achieve so much that I think because we are individual businesses, we can probably react quicker than a multinational. So it means we're quite dynamic. And they always want to do the right thing. On the whole, there's a lot of operators out there that want to do the right thing. And I think we've been at the leading edge of sustainable fish, and I think we'll probably be at the leading edge of packaging. But it's just getting the facts right. And I don't think we've not got the facts yet, so we can't pass it on to the industry. It's just caught everybody off guard. And I think in 12 months' time, we'll have more information. I think the DEFRA consultation may be out December, January. That might give us some answers, and then from there we'll have more discussions with government, and hopefully we've got the will there to get it right. The shops out there want to do the right thing. We just need the advice to make sure that what they're doing is the right thing for the environment.
Of course. So one question, it's two questions on my notes, but I'm going to bring it in together. I don't want to get stuck in the weeds on this one because they're both really contentious issues. One is VAT, one is Brexit.
Yeah.
So do you ever think that if we come out, without getting into the politics, do you think there is an argument for all food businesses to get together and renegotiate that VAT system?
I think the government might be receptive to it. All the noise from the Treasury is they don't like the VAT cliff. They've left the threshold the same to bring more people in the club. Yeah. It's more difficult to operate under the threshold.
Yeah, I guess it is, yeah.
I don't know how businesses do it. I mean, there's a business I know in the Northwest who's a member who legitimately traded under the VAT threshold, and they've had to register now. It's very, very difficult to.
It must be pretty tough, like at that level.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because commodities prices as well. Everything's just against you. But I think until Brexit, the government's
they've got the hands tied.
Yeah, they say they're powerless. They can only have two rates.
And I think that's a fair point. I think if it's a fair point, then we'll see if Brexit happens. And I think if you can get a coalition together, and plenty of people and, or groups, organizations to go there and say, look, guys, we need to re-talk about this, because I think half the problem is, I was talking about yesterday, this is my sad group of friends. We were talking about VAT yesterday, and we were saying, like, what's the difference between, so they say that value-added tax is the fact that you could have easily made it at home. So you could have made hot food at home, but you chose to buy it out. Yeah. Isn't that the same with a sandwich?
Yeah.
Yeah. I could make a sandwich at home, but if I buy a sandwich elsewhere, there's no VAT on it.
I think Greg's played the pasty tax thing was the NFFF right in the middle of that, because at the time we had a protective claim with KPMG, which was based on the German sausage seller Manfred Bog. I don't remember that name. And at the time we thought it's not got a lot of chance, but we had to do it, because if we didn't do it, people would say, why didn't you get involved? Later on we were contacted by Jacques Burrell. I don't know if he's the guy that argued TVA down in France, and I spoke to Jacques, and I fired a couple of emails, maybe through Denise as well, at the NFFF. And he was keen to come and talk to us, but we were already tied into the KPMG thing. And Jack's plan was to get TVA down for hospitality, which I think that there is some mileage, and I think that's something they'll look at.
I think back then when you had the KPMG thing, and I might have been seen as a poo-pooer. Yeah, I get that. But the way that the Germans calculate, or at least apply VAT, was very different to the way the British do. And that might have been pre-entry of the EU. But the way that the way I understood it is that the Germans put it on how much effort it goes to make something. And his argument was, well, I don't do anything. I get bread delivered and I get sausages delivered or hot dogs or whatever they are. And I just literally open a bag and put it in a warmer. And that's it. So his argument was, and how he won, was that there was no effort made, you know. Now, over here, the argument would be, was it a hot dog?
Yeah.
Yeah?
But again, that was crazy. I mean, the way it was discussed by the government was ambient temperature. Well, why not use food safety laws? So if it's refrigerated or if it's ambient, then it should attract VAT.
I actually think that the probably most sensible thing to do is to say, if you're buying food from out, not supermarket, obviously hot food or cold food to be consumed that wasn't made at home. Food on the go. That should probably attract a VAT level of, let's say, 10%.
Yeah.
Well, you now introduced another 50,000 businesses to it, so they're going to get more money out of it anyway.
Totally.
And then, you know, and then it sort of takes the pressure off people that, you know, probably don't like and struggle to put aside 20%. And I get that. Like,
I think everybody struggles with VAT, but I also think the ones that just go over the threshold, that have just joined the club, they've got a big gap to fill. There's a massive amount of money they've got to find.
Oh, definitely. And I feel for them. You know, it's hard trading like that, you know, especially when you're used to that disposable income. And now all of a sudden you've got to pass along 20%. But, you know, the way I sort of see it is that I would say from a business point of view, the way to prepare for that is to always be ready for it and always be collecting that 20%, even if it's yours, you know. And, you know, but the problem is if you're then there's a lot of people that would say that there's a lot of shops out there that don't collect the 20%, but I find it hard to believe that they don't charge for it. And maybe that's just me, and I'd love to see proof, and I'm always open to seeing that. I've generally found that fish and chips in areas are all quite consistent price-wise. Portions may differ, clearly. But, you know, maybe I'm wrong. I know, and I see a lot of fish and chip shops, but I think that if everyone's ready for that 20%, you know, then if you're factoring it in from day one, then it sort of helps, doesn't it? Yeah. You know, if you put 1/6 of your turnover to one side, a no-brainer, isn't it?
But most people don't set out thinking about VAT when they first go into fish and chips. They buy a business and they think, well, we can make a good living out of it, and all of a sudden it caught them out. And then VAT, obviously, the level's gone up. I don't think we'll ever get rid of it. I mean, no, I don't think so. I think the flawed thinking on the claim back was, well, certainly now, with the NHS on its knees, how bad would we look as an industry if we tried to get money off the government that could be spent on the NHS? Well, I think it's not going to work.
But it's fair to say that everything should be dealt with independently. And the fact is that, you know, maybe the government should focus more on kids eating sweets and drinking Monster on the way to school in the morning. And that's obviously having an impact on NHS, in my opinion. Yeah. You know, I was listening to a podcast this morning. I'll send it to you later, actually. And it's a doctor from Southport, GP from Southport. And he was saying that in 1982, when he became a GP, he said diabetes was basically classed as old age diabetes. Yeah. Now he's seeing kids as young as 12. You know, and you think, and that's not because of what we do. No. It's just not. Yeah. It's because all they drink and eat is refined sugar. Yeah. You know, we have a wholesome meal, you know, and to be fair, most takeaway foods are a lot better than liquid sweets and Monster drinks. Yeah. You know, I find, you know, I would possibly rather eat in a one rated takeaway than eat sweets, like, you know, because you're not going to get no nourishment, you know.
I think the government now is using the term HFSS, which is high fat, sugar and salt, isn't it? And there's definitely going to be some legislation. I mean, Transport for London at the moment, Sadiq Khan's banning food advertising, unhealthy food advertising on Transport for London next year.
It's the definition of unhealthy food, and that's
who makes that choice. Yeah. That's the thing.
And the problem is that the evidence is now showing us that, you know, increased consumption of highly inflammatory oils, you know, like, for example, vegetable oils, and then high consumption of sugar and sweeteners, because they prime your body for wanting more sweetness, you know. So I think that, you know, if I was defining unhealthy food, it's all the shit in, but yeah, I said I was never going to swear. I swore
I'm going to pull you about that.
Sorry, but I swore in context. But it's all the crap as such in, you know, the supermarket shelves. You know, it's the sweets, it's the grocery shop. Well, not the grocery shops, the news agents that kids, you know, eat every morning.
Well, they talk about banning takeaways opening near schools. They tried it in Preston. I don't know if there's still.
But that's not the problem, is it?
It's not. There's a sweet shop next door. There's a Tesco Express opened up recently, not far from a school.
You go. You know, and to be fair, most kids that have got £3 in their pocket aren't buying good quality fish and chips. They're just not. They are buying sweets and drinks, and and I think did they finally ban the Monster drinks, or is that a thing that's still going off at the moment?
I don't know if there's an age limit now. I think responsible retailers are putting an age limit on it, or banning them completely.
Yeah,
I mean they're definitely not good for you. And I used to be partial to a vodka Red Bull, but I try.
Well, that's a drink. That's a recreational drink. So but when you've got kids that aren't having a good breakfast, and they're eating all this junk, it's going to play havoc with them. It's going to play massive havoc.
We need to educate the parents. We need to get the message out.
We also need to be forceful and educate the government, because the problem is that they're quick to go after the easy target.
Yeah.
So a few years ago they were going after the chocolate companies and saying you got to be more responsible, and they were like, yeah, not a problem. We'll do what you say. What do they bring out? The Duo chocolate bars, and they say it's for sharing. I've never seen one person share a Duo chocolate bar ever.
No.
Yeah. So the fact is that they increased the portion size. I mean,
I went to a meeting, saying the British Takeaway campaign meeting last week. There was somebody there from PAPA, which is the Pizza and Pasta Association.
No, not Papas.
Yeah, no, not PAPA at all.
I was about to say, they get about. Right?
But what he was saying, we need to push back a little bit, because we do want to find a solution. We're part of the issue. We're definitely in the sights of the government, but we're responsible people, we're responsible businesses. We want to do what we can to help, but it's a multifaceted problem. There's other things that the government needs to focus on, not just attack us. And there's a danger that, yes, we want to work with public health. We have been doing. We've got direct conversations. Plus, we've got the conversation through the British Takeaway campaign. But we have to do what we can, but we don't. There's a limit to what we can do, and we can't keep giving and giving and giving. We'll end up selling tiny size portions and change the product. People expect a certain size product. We can offer them the choice so that they can make an informed decision. But just by saying you need to reduce your calories by 20%, which is the target, it's possible. But in reality, you know what it's like when you're serving people. Put more
the fact
products.
is, we shouldn't be telling people what to consume. That's a very slippery slope.
Yeah.
But should we be taxing foods? We shouldn't be calling them foods. Treats, like sweets, that are bad for people. We tax cigarettes, and they're probably going to legalize marijuana at some point, which will be taxed. So should sweets be taxed? Probably. We know for a fact that sweets rot children's teeth. Well, why haven't they been taxed?
But there's talk of putting extra tax on takeaways that are selling perceived unhealthy foods, but nobody knows what unhealthy is.
No, and that's the problem. If you look at the paperwork, cheese is unhealthy. If you ask the government, oh wait, don't eat a lot of cheese, it's full of saturated fat. Well, 1 minute. Because as far as I know, it's healthy, it's wholesome. Providing it was from a good source, it had environmental benefits. So what's wrong with that? So instead the more we remove healthy fats and good foods, the more people move to crappy food. And the fact is, this 25, 30-year campaign of reducing fat content, or consumption even, has just increased sugar and carbohydrate consumption. So, without being like a medical doctor or anything, that's where the problem lies. And the government needs to start looking at that, in my opinion. So that's my job for you, Andrew. That's what you've got to do. Yes.
We're on with it. Well, I mean, we've had a lot of engagement with public health. I think calorie reduction is something we can do as an industry, but we can't do it across the board. Offer the choices and give people the choice and give them the information that if you have a portion of chips that's 12 ounce, it's probably best sharing it. You don't need that many. People eat and then they don't feel full for 10 minutes, 15 minutes afterwards. It takes a while for your body to register. So just consume a little bit less. But if we give people the option, I've always said large chips should be called a sharing portion. Because people do share it. Even a regular portion of chips, I think most people probably have 2 fish and a portion of chips. I don't think it's many people could eat a full portion of chips. So why not have the option? But I think there's another side of it, is the packaging companies. The packaging companies need to get their act together, and some of the boxes that are available are too big. I think they probably need to look at. I mean, the compartmental boxes are quite good, but all in all, I think a portion of fish and chips in one of those corrugated boxes, you can get too many chips in. And you know what servers are like, they'll continue to do that. So it's okay having limits and putting penalties in place if shops exceed a certain number of calories, but in reality, it's just never going to happen.
Here's a thought that I had. Would you say that chip portions have got bigger as the chip size diameter has got larger. Because if it was, I'm not advocating this, it's just a conversation. If the chip diameter was 12 by 12, visually, customers have a lot of chips.
Yeah.
That's why McDonald's have a 4x4 chip fry, and it looks like you've got loads, when in actual fact, it's 110 grams. Yeah. So I'm sort of thinking to myself, if you move to like this one great fish and chip shop that you mentioned earlier in South Shields, and they do a 17 by 21, Now, do you think that if every shop went over to that, customers would be like, oh, that's not a lot of chips? Because it visually, because of the weight, doesn't look like a lot of chips. Whereas if you had like a 12 by 12, 14 by 14, it would look like a lot of chips. Because if you counted them all, you would literally have more chips.
But French fries are more filling because they've got twice. I mean, this is one of the arguments we've had with the Food Standards Agency. They do all their tests. They do French fries and chips bundled together. Yeah. But obviously, they're two different products.
Of course.
The nutritional profile, the acrylamide levels are a lot higher in French fries. Surface area is bigger. So a portion of French fries is more filling than the same size portion of chips. But I agree with you. Space... it fills up the box. Yeah. But we've not adjusted the boxes, and I think maybe there's room. People consuming food on the go more now. There's, I think, 34% increase in the last few years, and maybe there's room for the chip concept where we have a different package that's easy to hold, easy to consume with one hand box. It doesn't suit everybody because quite a lot of products are taken home and consumed at home. But I think. We can do something with packaging. We can try and change the packaging that we have available to us. I think Simpson's box in Cheltenham. Okay, it's a different size to the ones that are available from some of the other suppliers. It's more of a letterbox shape. It's narrower. I think that suits well because you get less chips in. Put the fish in first and make the box look more full. There's little techniques. If you have a look at perfectportion.co.uk, we put a few techniques on there just to show people, and we took a picture of a portion of chips in a tray and then emptied it onto a plate as well. And there's no way you consume it. You won't serve it in a restaurant like that, but we serve it in a takeaway. Yeah.
It's just getting that message to consumers, isn't it?
It is, well...
Because that's what everyone's going to argue. Everyone listening to this is going to say, well, you tell my customers that. Yeah. Well, look, so I get their point, but at the same time, it's just, where else can you get that volume of potato? I think Mike Pilley did a calculation ages ago, and he follows, everywhere he goes, he takes a portion of chips and he weighs them. And he says, he goes, I went to one place and it was 1.1 kilos of potatoes for £1.60. You can't buy them from the supermarket for that. And it's a real interesting point.
Nobody else will eat it. But one of the things we're pushing for is a government campaign, just like smoking or drink away, gambling, to try and educate people on portion of what to consume, because it makes our job easier. We've said it's difficult for us to do it on our own.
Do you see it as a problem in any other industry, though?
In every other industry?
As in food industry.
I think pizzas have certainly got an issue, haven't they?
Well, I think the problem with pizza is that, again, how do you say to someone, only buy a medium pizza for one person? If they want a large pizza, and this is, again, where do we get, it's that telling people what to do. So if someone decides they want a large pizza and chicken wings and chicken fillets, well...
I'll tell you what government are doing. They're not telling people what they want them to consume. They're telling us to tell them. That's the problem.
But the problem then is that the message is fragmented, and people like your Pizza Huts and Domino's will always capitalise on that. Yeah. Whereas we always look like the bad guys, because then, I spent £20 in here and I can't feed 8 people. You think, and I think, there's more regions where that's worse, and we know that, and especially if you're from very working class area, they've got a limited budget. But then there is an argument to say, well, if you accordingly drop the price and portion, and then or essentially bring out a new menu item like these light bites that people are talking about, I'm seeing them everywhere I go at the moment. And so there is if you create a whole new menu segment, you can hopefully change that.
Well, that's what I've done in my shop. I've got 4 light bite meal deals, which they work brilliantly. And I think you have got to reinvent it. You can't just suddenly put your price up and drop your portion. I think you've got to repackage it and rebrand it, relaunch it. It is very difficult, and I totally get it. The big problem we've got with fish and chips, and Paul Williams from KFE had this conversation with me. If it were invented 30 years ago, it'd be a totally different industry. We've got the heritage, which is the issue.
The problem is we're competing against ourselves 30 years ago, and it's always been seen as a meal for the poor, generally, and it was a filling meal, and it still is a filling meal. There's no doubt about it. If you're having 10-ounce fish and I don't know what, 9 ounce of chips, 10 ounce. I don't think anybody would say that wasn't enough for one person. That's more than enough.
But they expect bucket loads. That's the problem, and we need help to make the public aware that you know we've been doing our bit as the NFFF. I did an interview yesterday, which is on Monday, which is on this subject, which is about prices and portions, and we've done quite a few over. Obviously, with commodity prices, it's been quite a hot topic, and it went all over the world. But we can only get the message out to the listeners in Nottingham as it was on Monday, or obviously in the papers, but not everybody takes it in. And I think the perception is that fish and chip shop owners earn a lot of money. I think people think the money's going straight into your pocket and you're aware. They don't understand the costs, and that's also a difficult thing to get across to the public without sounding like you're moaning as well. So, I mean, I have conversations with people. When I had a refit last year, people say, oh, we're paying for all this new deco and we're paying for the new range. I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's how business works. But you can't say that to them. You know, it's like, I caught one of them just signing a new mobile phone contract the week after, and I said, you know something, when you sign that, I said, you're paying for decor in here as well. You know, that's business. You know, and he was all right with me, good customer, you know. But it's, I think in a fish and chip shop, you're there to be shot at by your customers, and they're jealous. They think you're earning a lot more money than them, and they're jealous of it. But I've got customers coming brand new Range Rovers. So I've not got a brand new Range Rover. You know, but they whinge about a 20p increase, and it's a very, very difficult line we've got to tread, and we understand that. But I think going forward, it needs to change. We have to adapt, or else we're going to be dead in the water. And I think the interview the other day, everybody said they pay for quality. So keep at the quality end and just try and, over time, we need to adapt it. You know,
So I'm conscious of time, and I know you're busy. So I want to sort of just go for a few short questions, and then obviously get this wrapped up.
Yeah,
excuse the pun. And then because you know you're a busy guy, and you've got about 15 people trying to call you and moan today.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably just Mark Drummond looking at it.
So what I wanted to ask is, you know, you've been president now for over a year.
Yeah, just over a year.
What's the plans? Yeah, what do you see as, you know, give us a little bit about what your plans are, what your biggest challenges are.
I think in the past we needed to improve our relationships with the supply companies. I think the NFFF, it's difficult balance we've got to get on the board, because you need experience there. I think in the past they probably got it wrong. Everybody was retired and they probably weren't in touch with what's going on in the industry. I think now we've got very active board. Everybody's got a fish and chip shop apart from one person who's very involved in legislation, very involved in training side of things. So I think we've got a great board. Obviously, we've got past winners, but we've got businesses of all sizes. People, I've had a little bit of flack on Facebook, and I think sometimes people think I've got one of these massive shops that I have the same pressures as everybody else. I struggle at the quarter to pay the VAT. You know, I'm here at my mum's house today, and me and my mum work together on things, and it's tough. And I know what running a fish and chip shop's like, and it is tough. But the problem, it's good having all these active people, and we are at the coalface. We know what pressures people are under, but we've also got our own business to run. So we spend a lot of the time in meetings. So most of my days off now are spent travelling the UK, then for meetings or attending exhibitions, or getting up early in the morning to travel to go to a steering group for the awards. But then I've got to come back to my own business. So
to those people that think negatively about the NFFF, like, you know, and maybe some have good reason, and maybe some just don't understand what the NFFF is, and there is that.
Well, I think that's our biggest challenge now. I think the industry, the supply side of it, understand that we've changed. I think they can see that we're capable. We're dealing with things. We're very proactive. We work with everybody. We try and get involved and support every initiative, and we've got great relationships out there. I think where we've failed in the past is telling the shops out there what we do. Yeah. Because we are that busy. You know, I can be. Yesterday I was up in the northeast. I'm here doing this today. I'm working in my shop tonight. I was frying on Monday in the shop. Tomorrow I'm in Leeds for a meeting. Then I'm frying Friday, Saturday. You know, so there's not a lot of time. We sometimes miss that bit where we inform people.
What would you say to those people though? Like if you had like a room full of people here that all hated you, not you personally, but the NFFF, let's say, what would you say to them? Like, what's your call to action to those guys and women?
I think we probably failed them in telling them what we actually do for the industry, but we're involved in every aspect that affects everybody's business, not just members' business. We're involved in every aspect, and we're very involved in it. We give up. I mean, I've got so many good board members that give up the time. I mean, they don't get paid for the role. It costs us money to do it because it's so important. And the reason I do it, obviously, followed my dad into it, and you see the difference it makes. It's what makes fish and chips different. We're the point of contact. Media stories about takeaways, 9 times out of 10, they contact us.
And you're all voted in. So it's not like you're all just it's not like I always joke about this. It's not like an old men's club. Me and my friend joke about it. It's not jobs for the boys. You're not all just sitting around the table patting each other on the back. You've got to, like you said to me earlier, you've told people, vote me out.
Yeah.
If you want someone else in, vote them in. And you're happy to follow that line, aren't you?
There's a process there. I mean, I followed Greg Howard in, who's great. He made some fantastic changes. And it was time for a change. And Greg knew that, I knew that, and we moved. I took over. At some point, it'll be time for somebody to take over from me.
Yeah.
When that comes, hopefully I'll have a feel for it. But you never know. I might just get stabbed in the back. But
you're not going to be some crazy dictator.
Certainly not. I mean, there's a process in place, and it was never a job I wanted to take on. It really wasn't. It was something that you kind of go. You see the difference the NFFF makes. You get involved in things, and all of a sudden you find out you're the best person to hold that position for a while, but you're just a custodian. And I once saw a documentary. It was one of these programs during the day on Longleat, and it was a guy that looked after the forest there. He was a groundsman, and he said, I took this job on 40, 50 years ago, and he said, when I took it over from the previous fellow, he said that if you leave the place in a better condition than when you took over, you've done a good job. And for me, that's what I'm trying to do for the NFFF. So I've spent the last year, I've been quite active. I think I've covered a lot of miles. And I just want to put the NFFF and the industry in a different plane to where it was in the past.
How much is the NFFF membership these days?
Just under £200.
Okay. So for a lot of people, would you say that's a lot? I'm not advocating that you do it cheaper, but would you say that's the biggest argument with it? Or is it just the fact they have to pay £200, you think?
I think probably people don't understand how much it is, which is, again, something we've done wrong in the past. We've got a new website.
So they probably think it's a lot more.
They probably do. We probably don't tell them what they get for that membership. So a lot of people say, what can I get out of the NFFF? Well, you've got legal cover for employment law. You've got access to a portal where you've got all your documents. You've got support. But more than that, you're supporting the people that are supporting your industry. And it's not just what you can get out of it. It's about helping us to do what we can for you. We're not making money out of it. It costs me money to do it. It costs the rest of the board money to do it. It costs a lot of time.
In an ideal way, though, you probably just, although you want people's membership money, you want them to get involved. It's like you want their ideas. You want them to be involved, don't you? So
totally. I mean, I've stopped being as active posting on the groups because... as you know, I used to be an admin with you, and it's very difficult not to overstep the mark and end up in an argument.
We both stepped down because we found that it was crossing our other lives.
Yeah.
And so, and I think people probably resented it and thought we were, I don't know, teachers almost, like telling people off. And it's not. We just thought it was a great group to be involved in. And
you've got to say something when you think it's wrong for the industry, because we do care about the industry, and same with Mark Drummond as well.
There's a lot of excellent advice on the groups. There's also a lot of terrible advice on it. But that is with any group. I see it in car forums. I see it in, in anything that has enthusiasts or business, so I think people need to tread carefully when they get advice. And then, but I think this is but it's difficult because not everyone can just drop everything they're doing to go on a 4-day course. Yeah. Ideally, or 3-day, whatever it is, you do that before you start your business, ideally. But I think that I wouldn't take everything on Facebook as face value. Even if you just step back and look at that in 3 days' time, you'd see loads of conflict in all of that different advice. Or you don't know what you're on about, this, like that. And that's fun, obviously, in the moment. But sometimes maybe, it's. I understand it's difficult. Where else do people go for advice?
Yeah.
And in your ideal world, it's just being an NFFF member, ringing up and saying, I've got a problem. And then you, I'm guessing, put them in touch with someone who does it daily.
Yeah.
So look, Facebook, it's great for people that feel like they need help now, but I suppose it's just the way it is, isn't it? And
I find it great. I mean, I keep an eye on more or less everything that goes on because I think it's very useful.
I don't know where you find the time, to be honest.
Well, you multitask, don't you? We're not meant to be able to do it as blokes, but I know you can as well. But I just keep an eye on things, and it gives us a barometer of how the industry feels on certain subjects, which it's fantastic. It's a great resource. But what the NFFF offers is insured advice. We are actually insured to advise members. So big issues, we can step in. And we do find that people have conflicts with suppliers, and sometimes it's difficult because our members can have an issue with a supplier But when we look at it with a balanced head, maybe the member was probably not right. So we kind of step in and try and smooth the problems over.
It's always difficult being a mediator.
Yeah.
That's a very difficult thing anyway. So, you
can end up not being with both parties not being happy with you. That's the difficulty.
Well, that's it. Yeah, definitely. But yeah. So, do you think there's an argument for some shops that have poorer cash flow, or would just like a monthly payment?
The problem with monthly payment, once we have talked about this, we talk about.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And over the years, there's been all sorts of ideas. With monthly payment, once people have paid the first month instalment, they've got the window roundel. We have the same thing with the quality one. People do the quality one, we find them still advertising it once it's expired. You'd find that people pay the first month and then...
No, but it's not so much that. What I'm sort of thinking is they've still got to get all those services. There's no benefit... I don't think there is, but, I don't think there's a benefit from just having a window sticker saying I'm an NFFF member. Maybe I'm wrong, but for me, it's a way for them to buy in at a monthly manageable cost, and it's also better for their cash flow.
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying, but I don't see that there's much of a benefit to the consumer of saying, oh, they're NFFF members. Not going to capitalise that much on it. Doesn't mean that they're a good fish and chip shop. It just means that they're members,
The problem is as well, though, out of hours, it's difficult to know who's a member and who's not. I've got access to the database, but that means if anyone's interacting with somebody that they presume was a member because they joined last we get the update of who's joined, and then they carry on giving them advice, they're actually giving them advice that they're not insured to give, if you know what I mean. And there could be a legal challenge. So that there are complexities, but we have talked about this. I had a chat with Mike Petru, and I have to say that the first podcast that came out agreed with everything that Mike said. I mean, the guy's a legend. And we have talked about tiered membership, but I don't think we're quite there yet. I think, as I said, we've been poor at telling people what we're doing for the industry, and we need to tell people that first.
And that segues on to the fact that you're now doing monthly videos, or at least videos, because I know it's hard to keep to a timetable. We all know what that's like. So, and that's all just to tell customers or even non-members what you're up to.
Yeah, I think it's important to show the human side of the NFFF. So I want to show some of the office staff, so people know who they're talking to at the other end of the phone. But I think it's important to let them see the inside of the building. I mean, all of us got involved because, Mark Drummond's a prime example. He came to an event which was Scottish fishermen. He attended that, and getting into the building, at the end of the day, it's the members' building. It's your organisation. Yeah. So just get involved. And I think that the videos are just a way of give people an insight to what we do, that we do work in shops. We've got our own business to run, but we give our time.
Do you ever do open days for non-members, every member, anyone, just to...
I think this roadshow, the workshops that we're looking at doing, is probably a good introduction to it, because it'll show people, it'll give us a chance to tell people what we're doing, but it'll also give people a bit of education, a bit of insight into training as well, and what are the benefits of training, because I think formal training, I started out and I learnt from my dad, but I've learnt so much since, and I think by getting out there in front of people might attend and add value to the workshop, whereas asking everyone to travel to Leeds is very difficult.
Yeah.
Even with training, we've started doing in-shop training. We've got the satellite training school in Northern Ireland. Not everybody can get to Leeds quickly. I mean, Craig Moore, who's my vice president, I feel so sorry for him when he has to drive up 8 hours to get to Leeds. Yeah. Last time I picked him up at Manchester Airport on the Sunday to save him the drive.
That makes sense, yeah.
I think we need to get out to people, but I think people have seen that we're a lot more approachable. I think social media does help with that. It hinders as well, because you get a message at midnight and it's like, but on the whole, I think people know that we are trying to do the right thing for the industry. We are approachable. We're just like them, and they can approach us, they can talk to us and ask us questions. I think we're getting less criticism on social media. But we're always open. Anyone can get in touch with me if they've got any suggestions or they think we should be going in a certain direction.
I always send people your way.
I know,
especially at like 10 to 12 at night.
I've had them at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, but at the end of the day, I love talking to fish friers, so get in touch.
2 more questions. What do you suggest every fish and chip shop owner should do?
At the moment, look at your business. We mentioned the shop I went to yesterday, which was Richard Ord up at Coleman's, and we're having this discussion. I think everybody needs to look at what they're doing, no matter what size of business you've got. And we're not saying cut portions, but you might be able to work more smartly with your fish. Training might help you with, just to maximise what you get out of your potatoes, what your yield from potatoes, yield from fish. So just look at what you're doing and see if there's anything you can do to improve. Don't cut corners, don't cut quality, but just see if you can work a little bit more smartly. Opening hours as well. I've seen a lot of shops post online that they're starting to close certain shifts. If it's not productive to do it, I think now's the time to have a look at that. Yeah. Or promote it so that you can get it busier. But don't just accept that you carry on doing what you're doing, because unfortunately we are facing tough times. It's going to be a tough, I mean, we say a year, but I think it's probably going to be more than that. I think it's probably going to be 2 years.
Yeah.
The word is that the potato seed's not good for next year, so we might have problems with potatoes 2 years in a row. I don't think the potato crop this year has been as bad as people expected, but the fish is going to be expensive. So I think now's just a time to focus on your business. I wouldn't be expanding. That's the last thing I'll be doing. But just make sure you're operating smartly and profitably. Look at your margins, look at your staffing levels, see what you can do just to make things a little bit easier, because things are going to be tough, I think.
And who have been the influences to you?
Well, obviously my dad, but as I say, we fought like cat and dog as well. So I find myself more and more often thinking, bloody hell, he was right. You know, it's like, as you get older, I think that's a natural thing, isn't it? You think you know everything when you're younger. In the industry, got to be Fred, who's, I'll not mention his surname because he won't share your podcast, I believe. So but fantastic knowledge, always willing to help people. Richard Ord, who I've just mentioned, without doubt, Commander-in-Chief of Fish and Chips. You know, he's so much knowledge, so much
and they've put
passion.
A lot back in, haven't they?
Oh, more than they need to, and it's but I mean, you look at Mark Drummond, the knowledge he's got. He attends meetings. I know, and I hate saying it, but he's great. You know, he'll put himself out. He attends meetings now for us, but he's just got so much to offer, and I think we're so lucky to have these people in the industry that all at the same time. Yourself and Mike Petru.
You don't get Mark Drummond texting you your spelling mistakes in your text messages, so. Yeah.
I do every so often. I've picked him up a few times on his as well, so it's good. But no, we're just in a good place at the moment. I think there's so many passionate people, and it's
so. Although there's a lot of negative, there's also a lot of positive, isn't there? Yeah,
totally. We've got the best product in the world. People love fish and chips. That's why we get so much media attention. We don't need to undersell it. We need to. It's not going to be an overnight thing getting it right, but I think we need to start getting it right. But the people that are in the industry, that's one of our greatest assets. There's so many characters. It attracts so many characters. That's why it's so volatile sometimes on Facebook.
I think yeah, well, exactly. And I think, you know, one thing you can't say, I was talking to a stockbroker that I know, and he said, you always want ups and downs. He goes, there's money to be made in ups and downs. And we generally, as an industry, have lots of ups and downs. He goes, what you don't want is stagnation. And we don't have that. As an industry, we have lots of ups and downs. And I know we're not dealing with stocks, we're dealing with commodities, great commodities. So I think we've got a lot to be grateful for, I think. But just before we go, I don't know if you saw it on the bottom of the show notes. Have you got a book recommendation for people?
I tend not to have time to read it. It's probably since we're at school. But what I do, I spend a lot of time on the motorway, and I've got sick of listening to radio. It's the same songs all the time. And I've got sick of mixes or my own MP3s. So I've started getting audio books. And there's one, quite a few business books I get, and I just find it interesting. I like the process of learning. There's one I listened to this week, which was Tribes, which is by Seth Godin, I think it was.
Godin,
that's it. And it just tells you about movements rather than... I think that's what we've got in fish and chips. We're not a business. We're fragmented, but we can create a movement. You know, we've not got a CEO that runs everything. We've got people that can advise on what direction to go. But if we can create that movement and take the industry in a certain direction, I think together we can take everything on. We're so adaptable, and this book just talks about how successful people, just instead of trying to force things, that just by creating a certain environment, by creating a culture, you get people wanting to be part of it. And I think that's what we need to do. Not just on running the business, but in our own businesses, attracting staff. By being a little bit more friendly, a little bit less dictatorial. You know, and just create a culture that propels the entire industry on, because we're all only as good as our staff.
It's true. Yeah, it's true.
So for me, that's probably the one that's stuck in my mind recently. But I've got a few more drives to do this week, so I'll probably have another one tomorrow.
Brilliant. Well, Andrew, I just want to say thank you for your time. I know we've not always been on the same side, but I think that we've always had the same goal. I think. And it's nice to sit around the table with you and have this conversation.
I think we both come from the same place, which is wanting the best for the industry. Which
you're definitely not born and bred in an Eton, so but thank you for your time, and we'll do this again, because I think you're always going to have lots of regular updates, I think, for people.
Yeah, my pleasure, anytime.
All right, mate. Thank you. And that's another one done. Thank you for listening to me and Andrew, everyone. I think it was of value. I think it was good. Like I said, a lot of topics were discussed, but I think we can also check in with Andrew from time to time, because he's always going to have a lot to update us on. And I think for regular updates straight to your phone, subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to it, and please leave us a comment. Thank you, guys and girls.